Get inside, get what we need.
And this is this week's Classic Classic.
Fireworks, the show that takes you inside the Burlington Fire Department, sponsored by Firefighters Local 2313. I'm your host, Lieutenant Lee Callahan. With us in this edition of Fireworks is Firefighter EMT Mark Saia. Mark, welcome to Fireworks again. You've been with us once before. We did a little interview with you in the back of the ambulance, and I appreciate you sitting down and talking with us for this Fireworks edition. We're going to be sharing some summer safety tips with the viewers. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself first.
Well, I've been a firefighter here in Burlington for the last 5.5 years. In addition to that, I've been a paramedic in the state of Massachusetts for approximately 10 years, most recently acting as a paramedic at Boston MedFlight.
Okay. All right, so we're going to share some safety tips with you. Some of it will have to do with children, some of it will have to do with household safety tips. We just want to kind of spread out what we're talking about, so that even if you don't have children, you might, you might have a house and you might have some of the storage problems that we're going to talk about and different things like that. So we hope you'll find it interesting, and hopefully we can save somebody some pain and sorrow by sharing some tips like this. Let's talk about bicycle helmets first, Mark. What's the idea of the bicycle helmets?
Okay, well, this particular time of year brings a wide variety of issues as far as children, as far as safety and weather-related issues. Injuries and deaths among children continue to be the #1 cause of issues with children reaching the ages of 1 and 15. And a lot of the research that's been done has revealed that a lot of the injuries and deaths could have been preventable if proper safety tools were used. Bicycle helmets are #1 issue as far as any children using bikes or playing with skateboards or inline skates. They provide the full bicycle helmets, the ones that are approved for bicycles and inline skating, proved to be quite useful for any falls, because it protects the entire head and it protects the neck.
And of course, the bicycle helmet use for children is the state law as well.
It is the state law, correct.
Up to what, 12 or 13?
Up to the age of 12, yes.
12 years old.
Yeah.
So it's important that people follow the law, but more than that, it's important that they protect their children.
That's correct, and you know, they do work. The bicycle helmets do work. We've seen many times here at the fire department and at MedFlight that if the children had just had their helmet on, then their injuries would be a lot less severe.
Good, and you mentioned skateboarding and inline skates as well as helmets. They have the whole range of elbow pads, wrist guards, knee pads, and things like that, right, that the kids should be wearing.
Correct, which continue, as previously stated, continue to be quite effective and quite useful. In addition to those, there tends to be a lot of trampolines out now, you know, if you do have a trampoline, you want to make sure that there is a net around the trampoline, and that you're also that you're also wearing some sort of protective gear, and the elbow pads and the knee pads and all the protective gear tends to work.
It might be a good idea if you have a trampoline as well to have adult supervision, because sometimes you know how kids are. Kids will do some crazy things, and before you know it, they're doing things that may get them into trouble on an apparatus such as a trampoline. So it'd be a good idea to have some adult supervision as well.
Correct, and if we expect our children to wear the gear, then we should also be wearing it too.
Absolutely, do as I say
Correct,
and as I do.
correct.
Okay, let's turn to pool safety. It's the summertime, people are swimming, they've got pools. What are some tips we can share with the viewers on pool safety?
Well, unfortunately, there continues to be a large amount of drownings at this time of year. There'll be approximately 800 drownings this year, and again, the common theme is a lot of them could have been preventable. I think the number one pool safety tip that we can give is to make sure that the children are never left unattended by the pool. And things like hot tubs are very, very popular now, and what we're finding is kids are not only having issues in pools, but they're having issues in their parents' and their grandparents' hot tubs.
I see.
So never to leave the children unattended.
Now that's something you just don't think about. You think the hot tub, that's an adult luxury,
Right.
and yet the kids very easily, especially a toddler, could just kind of slip over the edge of
That's
that
right.
and be in it in no time at
That's
all.
right. So again, never leave children unattended by pools or hot tubs, and the majority of hot tubs now are being sold with covers. So if the adults are not using the hot tub, to make sure it keeps covered.
Okay, so things like making sure you have automatic closing gates around your pool, and if you happen to have an above-ground pool and you have a ladder that drops down, make sure that when it's not in use, that ladder is in the secured position, in the up secured position. Obviously, a motion sensor in the pool might be a good idea.
That's right.
So if somebody goes in the pool without, being authorized or whatever, that sensor will sound and you'll know somebody's in the pool. You can go check it and make sure that it's not just the dog, that, hopefully it wouldn't be one of the children. The other thing is swimming alone. A lot of times, adolescents especially like to swim by themselves. They'll go out and swim by themselves. The parent will say, "Oh, just go out, I'll be out in a few minutes." That's not such a good idea either.
That's right. That's right. So never go swimming alone. Never leave a child unattended. Children should all have some sort of protective swimming gear, especially the ones that are inexperienced as far as swimming. There's been a new recent focus on the drains at the bottom of
Yes,
pools,
yeah.
and there's been a lot of research done on that. And you want to make sure that if your pool, whichever pool you do have, that it has a protective cover on the drain.
And you want to make sure that the pool, the physical pool itself is well maintained.
That's right.
And that includes the chemical use too. You want to use the chemicals responsibly, according to the manufacturer's recommendation, and that goes for the storage of pool chemicals as well.
Correct.
Store them according to how the manufacturer would tell you to do so. One last thing on pools is, in swimming in general, not just pools, but lakes and the ocean and stuff, is be careful. If, as an adult, if you happen to be drinking alcohol.
Can I have Mark or Jack to the lobby for a blood pressure check? Mark or Jack
That is,
for a blood pressure check?
if you heard that announcement, somebody's being paged to the lobby to check a citizen's blood pressure, and we will do that. If somebody walks in during normal business hours, we will check their blood pressure. Sometimes we have people do that whose doctor wants them to have a running count on what their blood pressure is over a given period of time. We'd be glad to assist that. So that's just a little free information that we can pass on. But getting back to the swimming, alcohol use when you're swimming, it's important. I mean, I'm not saying don't drink, but obviously in moderation. If you feel impaired or think you're going to get impaired, don't go in the water.
That's right.
A lot of the drownings that take place on beaches and in pools for adults seem to be alcohol related.
Correct. And anything that you would feel would impair your judgment, you want to stay away from the pools or the lakes, or even boating in general. You wouldn't want to be operating a car while intoxicated. You also wouldn't want to be operating a boat or any mechanical vehicle. In addition to that, if you do have a pool or you're going to be around a pool, I would strongly suggest that at least 1 or 2 adults in that area are CPR certified.
Good tip. And which brings us to another little tip. We do have CPR classes, although they're not certification classes, they're bystander CPR classes here at the fire station, which the citizens can come on a monthly basis. We're on a summer hiatus right now, but starting in September again, citizens can sign up and we'd be glad to teach them bystander CPR.
Correct. We've had several phone calls in the last couple of weeks of residents in town who have had pools installed, who are really concerned. They're gonna have a lot of children around and wanted to get CPR certified, and that's great. Good for them for thinking of that.
That's right, it's important. Because, I mean, we can do our job when we get there, but there's that time frame between when the need actually arises and when emergency personnel get on scene.
Correct.
And it's important for something to be done for the victim or patient in that interim.
Right.
So by people knowing CPR on the scene, it really starts the, what we call, the chain of life.
Chain of survival.
Chain of survival, it starts it going, and it's important, each link is important.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about allergic reactions, and particularly bee stings. In the summertime, the bees are busy. Sometimes, especially kids, will get into some place where the bees are particularly active, and the bees don't like being infringed upon. So talk a little bit about allergic reactions.
Sure. So children in general, there's been a high incidence of children developing allergies to not just bees, but a lot of different things. There's a high incidence of asthma nowadays, and in addition to food allergies, there's identified as food allergies. So kids are out and about this time of year. They're in a lot of camps.
Jack Walker, you have a call in dispatch, Jack?
So there could be in areas where there's going to be a lot of different things that they could be allergic to, such as bees, and they could be given food. A lot of children are allergic to nuts. I myself am allergic to nuts. And
Does that mean you don't like the guys you work with?
Exactly, yeah. And so I think it's very important for children and parents to let the either camp counselors or the caregiver for that day know. I think awareness is the first key to it. So if the camp counselor knows that a certain person is allergic to bees or allergic to certain foods, then they can be prepared if something happens. It's being unprepared and not knowing that you tend to run into problems. A lot of the camp counselors, a lot of the recreational type summer programs, certain people will be certified in administering a bee sting kit or the EpiPen, and a lot of the children will be coming to the program with their own EpiPens.
All right, when you mentioned EpiPens, for the viewers, explain what an EpiPen is, and maybe talk about shelf life, things like that.
Sure. So an EpiPen is a device that, when administered, helps to reverse the effects of an allergic reaction. And so it's very easy to administer. It looks like a pen, and you administer it either in the leg or the arm, and it has epinephrine in it, which reverses the effects of allergic reactions. It works very effective. However, it has to be
Chief
administered.
Tebow, 1926, Chief, call 1926.
So it needs to be administered as soon as the reaction starts, or as soon as the person becomes symptomatic. The EpiPen has a shelf life of approximately 2 years. The people who have their own EpiPen know the dates on it, but the camp counselors or us here at the fire department, we're all EpiPen certified. We look at it and we know when it's expired or not. And there's two different types of EpiPens. There's one for adults and there's one for the pediatric population.
Okay. And typically with an EpiPen, when it's administered, in most cases we see a fairly quick reversal.
Yes, EpiPen should take effect within the first minute or two, so it works very quickly, and that's the key. You want to get that antidote to that medication in there as quick as possible to try to reverse the effects of it.
Okay. Again, it's summertime, people are traveling a lot. I see it a lot where I go on vacation and stuff, especially. It seems like a lot of times people still haven't gotten the message about car seats. Can you share with us a little bit about car seats?
Sure. So car seats are extremely important amongst the pediatric population, the infant pediatric population, just as important as it is in adults. However, the issue with adults is we know that we're supposed to put our seatbelts on, and it's our decision to or not to. Unfortunately, children don't have that decision, and the adults have to make that decision for them, and we hope that the adults do make the right decision for the children. There will be approximately 1,100 deaths this year as a result of children not being properly restrained in their car seats. And each individual police department in the area will, you can go in there, they have car seat clinics on a regular basis, and even if they're not having a car seat clinic that week, you can drive into your local police department, and they'll tell you whether or not you have your car seat properly installed. And there are standards, and they'll tell you whether or not you've meeting your standards.
With that in mind, I want to particularly encourage people to contact Officer Scipoletti over at the police department, because he's very aggressive on making sure that people know how to install their safety seats for their children. That's a big issue for him, and he's doing a good job of getting that message out.
Bernie is doing a wonderful job at that. He's really taken that program under his wing and has made the awareness level, a real heightened awareness level in Burlington as far as car seat safety, and he's made it very, very public that you can drive into the police station anytime you want, and then if he's available or anybody else available, they'll let you know whether or not your car seat is properly installed. Right now, anyone under the age of 12 needs to be in the back seat, and depending on the weight, whether or not you need to be in a car seat.
And that's where I see a big problem with, the age of the kids that are in the front seat. Of course, parents get tired of listening to the kids whine about not being able to see anything from the back seat, but in the bigger picture, a little whining is a lot better than a lot of tragedy.
Correct. And the reason being for that is the danger with having front passenger side airbags with children under the age of 12, because where the airbag gets deployed has been shown to cause more harm than good. And so it's all based on height, and basically they're saying any 12-year-old under the age of under the height of 5'4" should be in the back seat.
Okay. You mentioned airbags, we might as well tackle that as well. People should understand that airbags, when they deploy, can cause some injury. In fact, we had one last week where an airbag deployed on the passenger side, and there was a young man about 13 or 14 years old, and he got a bloody nose from it and stuff. But when you think of what could have happened with his face slamming the dashboard or the windshield or something like that, a bloody nose or a bloody, I believe it was bloodied lip because he had braces.
Right.
He had mouth braces, and so, when that bag came out, it just pushed his lips back into his braces and got a little bloody, but other than that, he wasn't hurt. And it's important that people know there is going to be some potential for some minor injury to an adult, but typically they certainly are doing much more good than they are harm.
In comparison to what could happen if the airbag did not get deployed, it's minimal. The biggest complaint or the biggest issue that we find with airbags after we get to an accident, people complaining of their face burning or their face being a little red, because there is a chemical that is discharged causing the airbag to deploy, and that's easily washed off and no harm done.
Okay. Let's talk about storage of gasoline. This time of year, people are using their lawnmowers, their power trimmers, all kinds of chainsaws, all different things. So they've got gasoline in storage containers that they're using fairly freely. We recommend, number one, adamantly that you don't store the gasoline in the house, and that you only store in small quantities. 1 gallon cans would be best. Now, granted, if you have a bigger machine that takes more gas, you can get a bigger container, but store it away from the house. Store it under cover in the backyard or in a secure location away from the house. But it's important not to store gasoline in the house, and because the vapors could escape, could travel in the house, and if you have a pilot light or anything from your hot water heater or any type of a spark, even flipping a light switch, if you've got gasoline vapors that have escaped, you have the potential for an explosion there. So it's important not to store the gasoline or the machinery itself, the mowers and the chainsaws and things like that, in the house. Store them out in a detached garage, store them out in a storage shed. If we get a call for a fire or something in a storage shed, we're automatically thinking for the potential of gasoline being out there, pesticides and insecticides, herbicides being out there. I mean, a lot of that stuff, we're expecting that to be out in the shed. But we don't want to see that in the house. Too many things, too many bad things can happen by having that in the house.
This is the time of year where everything comes out, people take the fertilizers, the insecticides, all the plant food off the shelf and bring it at a low level, so you need to be very careful about children around that area, especially around the insecticides and the gasoline. And people need to realize that you just don't necessarily need a match to start a fire.
Right.
That rag soaked with
Linseed oil.
or anything that you might clean paint off with.
Right.
Can ignite, and we'd go to a house fire and people couldn't understand why their house burned down when they weren't near a match, to come to find out that it was rag soaked with linseed oil or rag soaked with turpentine that just ignited. The fumes caused it to ignite from the friction. I believe there was an incident last week in Woburn where a gentleman was burned very severely for children playing with gasoline in his garage, where no matches were used at all, but the gasoline ignited with another product in the garage, and the gentleman was burned very severely. So I think that anything that's flammable or combustible, people need to be aware of and make sure that it's away from the house and properly ventilated.
Okay. We're filming this early part of the summer. Unfortunately, the viewers will see this probably after the 4th of July, but let's talk about fireworks.
Sure.
The dangers of fireworks. From a injury point of view, what can you share with us?
I think the biggest thing that we find is injuries to the extremities, injuries to the hands. People children or adults are lighting the fireworks, and there's a short fuse, and they're not. You should never actually light a firework in your hand. You should be putting it on the ground, lighting it, and getting away from it as far as possible. What we find is the fireworks exploding in people's hands or near their face. And those are probably the big explode or blast injuries are the biggest thing we find at this time of year.
Okay, so people can actually lose portions of their extremities.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We also have the burn factor.
That's right.
People can get their extremities burned, or they can actually be burned in a bigger way. I'm thinking sparklers, as simple as sparklers are. The handheld sparklers, the kids love them, but they burn at 1800 degrees.
Right.
That's extremely hot, and when kids start waving them around and everything else, it's a recipe for disaster.
Right.
They definitely, if they're gonna be used, and I don't advocate their use at all, but if they're gonna be used, at least make sure that there's good, solid adult supervision when they're used. With that being said, I will tell you, we had a house fire back in the winter time where 2 adults found some old sparklers in the garage and lit them and played with them in the garage and thought they were out and threw them down into some debris, and next thing they knew, they actually had a garage fire.
Right.
So even adults don't necessarily use them properly, and with the sparklers, even when the spark itself is gone, that rod stays extremely hot for an extended period of time. Again, so I don't advocate the use of sparklers at all, but if they're going to be used, at least make sure there's good, close adult supervision, knowing how hot they get. But we'd be remiss if we didn't say that the actual use of fireworks in the state of Massachusetts is illegal. The reality of it is the fireworks are out there. They're going to be used. We don't advocate their use at all, except under a licensed fireworks display, which falls under the rules and regulations of the Department of Public Safety. But if they are going to be used, let's make sure that there's adult supervision, that the kids are kept way back from wherever they're being used, and hopefully people will have a safe summer. But the burn issue, very painful. And I've seen video, fortunately I haven't seen it in real life, but I've seen video of children's clothing catching on fire because of being too close in the proximity of fireworks being used illegally.
Right. That is unfortunately all too common.
Okay. We got that taken care of. Okay, a lot of times we'll go out on medical aids, we get there. The patient will have a history of medical problems, but when you ask what the medications are that that person is on, which we need to know, be able to give that information to hospital staff, a lot of people don't have that information immediately available. What would you say to the viewers regarding that?
Well, I can't stress the importance of updated medication lists to us in general. When we go to someone's house or wherever they might be feeling ill or sick, it's so important for us to know what type of medications they're on, and whether or not it could be some sort of reaction they might be having to some of the medication, or a lot of the times we'll get there and we'll find out that the person is a diabetic, so maybe they might be having some sort of diabetic reaction, and if we know for a fact that they're a diabetic and they're on insulin, then that might answer a lot of the questions that we might have. So an updated list on the refrigerator or someplace that we might be able to see it is so helpful.
Yeah, the refrigerator thing is a good tip, because they can get those little refrigerator magnets. But we will automatically look there. If we're looking around for a list of meds, we'll automatically go to the refrigerator to see if there's something there, because a lot of people will do that, but a lot of people don't do that as well. So it's a good idea to make sure that you have an updated list of medications. And a lot of people will let their prescriptions grow old.
Yes.
And there's some danger in that too, isn't there?
Yeah, and a lot of the issues that you would have with prescriptions growing old would be the fact that they would be ineffective. There's a fair amount of people who take nitroglycerin for angina or chest pain or cardiac-related issues, and if those expire, then they have a decreased amount of effectiveness to the point where they might not even work at all. So it's very important for people to know what the expiration dates are, and to know, a lot of the times when we go into someone's house, we'll be handed a little case or suitcase of people's medications, and the only thing that'll be in it will be the pill, and there'll be 6 or 7 white pills in it. And for us to just look at 6 or 7 white pills, we're not going to know what it is. So it's very, very important that you have a list of the medications, and that you know as a patient or person taking the medications, why you're taking them, and what some of the possible side effects are, and what the expiration dates on them are.
Okay, we've only got a few more minutes, Mark, so let's quickly talk about the heat, working out, doing things in the heat, overexertion in the heat.
Right, so we're actually filming this today on a day where it's going to be in the mid-90s, where tomorrow's forecast is possibly going to be close to 100.
So it's appropriate.
Right, with extreme humidity. So I think this type of weather affects all, but I think it most affects the very young and the very old. The very young population, they don't have the ability that we all have to temperature regulate ourselves. So it's very important as caregivers of the young to realize this, keep them very calm, keep them cool, and watch their exertion. As far as the elderly, the same thing. The ability to control temperature is a lot less than the average adult. So it's very important to limit exercise, to stay in a very cool environment, and to hydrate.
Plenty of fluids.
Plenty of fluids, and in all age groups. You want to, even though you might not be thirsty or you don't feel like you might be dehydrated, it's not going to hurt to just add a couple extra glasses of water in the course of the day to keep you hydrated. If you're going to be doing any type of physical exercise at all, the thing that people I think forget the most is to make sure that you hydrate before the exercise. People might be having issues while they exercise, they might be getting cramps or whatever, and they can't understand why when they've been drinking the whole time they're exercising, until we ask them, well, how much did you drink before? And they say, well, I really didn't drink before. So you want to make sure that you hydrate before any activity, during any activity, and after any activity.
Okay. Quickly, we'll talk about gas grills. You want to make sure that your gas grill is in good shape, that there's no leaks in the hoses, that you keep the kids away from it when you're using it. It gets very hot. An issue with gas grills right now, as many of you are finding out, is that you can't replace your old tank. You can't refill your old tank. You have to replace it. So what we are suggesting that you do is take it to where you have it refilled and see if they have a recycling program. Typically, it might cost you anywhere from $3 to $7 to have them take your old tank, but they're going to safely dispose of that old tank and then you can buy a new tank with the overfill protection device already in it. That tank's, the state-of-the-art tank. But we want to make sure that you dispose of the old bottles, the old tanks, correctly, and that would mean taking them someplace where they recycle them. Another issue, quick issue, because of the heat, a lot of people are using fans. The problem with fans is potential for little fingers being stuck in those fans.
Correct.
And then you obviously got an issue with the potential of losing those little fingers in the blades of the fan.
That's correct. Some of the newer fans have the screens on them that are very, very close together and very tight, protective devices where little fingers can't get in there, but some of the older ones still do that. You want to make sure that the young children are staying away from the fans, that and in the air conditioners and the fans, that the plugs are in good condition, that the wires are not frayed or loose, because there has been house fires as a result of
house fires or potential for shock,
right.
Electrical shock, things like that. Okay, we're just about out of time. I just want to remind the viewers, summertime especially, the blood supplies are critically low. Please, every Tuesday at the American Legion, starting at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you can walk in and give blood. It's critical this time of year that the Red Cross maintains sufficient blood for the emergency use that it's needed for operations, for just all the different uses they can use your blood for. It's critical that you go there every Tuesday. It takes you about an hour maximum, and they're fun people to be with. So please, go down there every Tuesday, American Legion on Wynn Street. Mark, I want to thank you very much for sharing some safety tips with us. We hope the viewers found this informative. And as always, talking with you about things like this, it's always a pleasure, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's great to be here.
I'm your host, Lieutenant Lee Callahan. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, stay safe.